Welcome, everyone. We will get started here in just a minute. Hi, Deanna. I'm just giving you a voice check. You said you can't hear. I haven't said too much yet, so just giving you that audio check. Letting everybody get in here. Welcome, everyone. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. It looks like the queue has slowed down a little bit, so welcome. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us for our Indiana Youth Worker Wellbeing Project. This session will be covering our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in youth serving organizations in an effort to support those of you who are considering or will be applying for the grant opportunities. My name is Becky Wright. I am one of the directors of quality for the Youth Worker Wellbeing Project at IYI. On the call as well, we have our other director of quality, Evan Dentley, and our vice president, Cassie Wade. You may see their interactions in the chat or supporting with Q&A as well. So let's start with the logistics for today. Generally, the format, we're going to go through a quick overview of the Youth Worker Wellbeing Project. We will then focus on some content-related foundational level content around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging to help you kind of ask some questions and guide some thoughts as you head into the application process. Again, that is really the purpose here today. And then we will talk about the grant opportunity a little bit as well, and what the application questions look like and some of the logistics there. I do want to let you know this session, as you probably saw, is being recorded. So you will have access to that for future playback for yourself or for anybody else on your team. In addition, you will receive a follow-up email within a few days that will include this PowerPoint deck, that recording link, and we'll give you the direct link back to the website where you can access the application, the resources, the partners, all of the pieces that you're going to need to move forward in this process. Additional logistics for today, we ask that you put your questions in the Q&A spot so that we can see those and they don't get lost in the chat. I will also say, though, I encourage chatter in the chat. That doesn't bother me. I like seeing the interaction or encouragement. hit the reaction buttons if you're excited about something. As you know, if you're a presenter, not seeing faces sometimes is a little sad and you want to see those reactions. So I encourage engagement in the chat or via the reactions, but let's keep those questions and answers in that area. So let's get started. What is the Youth Worker Wellbeing Project? Well, the Youth Worker Wellbeing Project is a collaborative statewide effort that looks to address youth worker well-being, workplace conditions, and root causes of stress in the sector with an effort to cause meaningful change in youth workers and invest in their well-being so that they can provide and continue to provide high-quality services for our Indiana youth. We're doing that in a variety of ways. One of which is access to virtual telehealth and virtual mental health counseling services for youth workers and their families. We're also providing peer support groups, which provide opportunities to share experiences, support one another in a safe, culturally responsive environment facilitated by an awesome clinical partner that we have. And then we have Emerging Leaders of Color Development Series, which is looking at addressing disparities between frontline youth workers and leadership in an effort to diversify leadership in the youth serving space. And then, of course, while you're here today, which is opportunities for youth agencies to apply for funding to pilot or implement strategies that improve diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And then in addition to the content we're talking about today, trauma responsiveness within organizations as well. So I mentioned this is a collaborative effort. The original proposal submitted to Lilly Endowment was a cohesive, comprehensive collaborative effort from the 5 statewide intermediaries you're seeing in front of you. Indiana After School Network, IARCA, IYI, IYSA, and McCoy. IYI was then selected to receive the funds and implement the project. The remaining leadership, in addition to IYI's leadership, make up the managing committee that continues to support the vision of the project in alignment with that original proposal. Okay, so I want to start first today with looking at the vision for the funding. We have a very clear kind of vision and focus that we're trying to reach with these grants. So the vision is to fund diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging and trauma-informed workplace efforts that look to increase youth worker well-being, that cultivate a workplace environment that decreases stress, addresses vicarious trauma, increases belonging, and provides opportunities for youth workers to engage fully and authentically as themselves every day at work. So how did we get here? Well, I mentioned the proposal process. Of course, with that, there was research and focus groups and surveys of organizational level leaders, of frontline staff, right? And this is what we heard as it relates to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We heard that Indiana youth workers of color often feel slighted, ignored, or are victims of bias or microaggressions in the workplace, either from coworkers, supervisors, and clients that they're serving. We also heard that initial efforts by organizations have not turned into substantive change within the organizations. From organizations, we heard some potential barriers. We heard that they maybe want to move forward, but aren't quite sure where to start or how to proceed. We also heard that they're unsure of whom they should select to guide them in this process and in this work. And we also heard that some may not have the funding to engage in formal equity work or consulting. We also acknowledge that youth serving organizations across the state are all at different points in the spectrum of their diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging work. Some have made progress, some are considering options, and others have not yet begun. So what we want to try to do today is kind of start with some foundational concepts. For some of you, this may not be new. For some of you, it will be. But what we want to do is just talk terminology, talk what some baseline pieces look like as it relates to that, and then some potential best practices in the workplace environment. I do want to say this is not by any circumstance the all-intensive, all best practices that are going to happen, But again, the goal today is to get you thinking about what you might do. So if you see something and you're like, hey, I'm not sure what that is, then you have some time to research that or to connect with a partner that can provide that support for you. So again, today we're just trying to kind of start that process rolling of awareness of what it could look like or might look like. All right, so let's start. Diversity. So my favorite definition of diversity, honestly, is the simplest, shortest definition. There are a lot of definitions out there, but my favorite is just, it's simply the existence of difference. It's the existence of difference. So different race, ethnicity, culture, identity, religion, gender, expression, ability, thought, background, experiences, or generational differences. As a baseline, we want to see awareness of this difference, appreciation for diversity, and understanding of individuals and groups in their intersections that they bring to the workplace. We want to value the impact of a diverse workforce on the organization and its mission. As we look to do even better, some of best practices could include encouraging additional representation. So does your workforce look like those you're serving? Is it diverse? What does recruitment, hiring, and retention of diverse staff look like? Are you seeking out with intention diverse opinions and input from staff? And that could also look like or include, right, multi-generational or multicultural collaboration in the workplace. Let's go to equity. So equity refers to the fairness and justice and is distinguished from equality in the following way. Where equality might mean providing the same to all, equity means recognizing that we don't all start from the same place, and we must acknowledge that and make adjustments to those imbalances. At a baseline, equity in the workplace looks like all staff being able to engage fully, being able to take advantage of opportunities, and potentially advance if desired. It looks like identity or cultural norms not negatively influencing those opportunities for engagement or advancement. Best practices could include, again, addressing disparities for advancement opportunities. That looks very much like our Emerging Leaders of Color Development series, acknowledging that the frontline staff and the leadership staff have a disparity in diversity. It looks like awareness, assessment, knowledge, and adapting around pay equity. It also looks like providing resources, tools, or knowledge to support moving from equal, from providing the same to everyone, to equitable, again, providing the tools, resources, and knowledge necessary. And ultimately, on the underlying foundation of all of it, it looks like transparency in the workplace. All right, so inclusion. Inclusion means that people across varying identities are and feel valued, welcomed, respected, included, represented, and heard, and that they fully belong, can be authentic, and can contribute to the collective and have a voice. So at a baseline for inclusion, we need to remove barriers to access. That includes access to engagement or access to opportunities in the workplace. Staff need to feel safe and encouraged to be able to express themselves fully and authentically. And collaboration is encouraged and celebrated among teammates, staff. No matter the hierarchy, collaboration is encouraged. Best practices in the workplace for inclusion, flexibility. Flexibility means you're going to need to adjust for the diverse needs of your staff. Again, to make sure that there are not barriers, to make sure they can fully participate. It looks like non-dominant norms and narratives being focused on. That might include the redistribution of power. It also looks like opportunity for leadership, voice, and contribution by all staff members. It can also look as simple as celebrations of culture and difference and connections among staff. And it looks like cross-identity collaboration. So belonging, and as you can see, we get more, they all connect, right? So belonging then is the feeling of security and support, when there's a sense of acceptance, inclusion, and identity for a member of a certain group. In essence, belonging is the metric as to which you measure inclusion. So what does that look like at a baseline? It looks like your staff individually being respected and acknowledged for all of their unique contributions. From a culture standpoint, it also feels like feedback being encouraged, and not just feedback, but dissent being okay and welcomed. Best practices, psychological safety for individuals to show up fully every day. It might look programmatically like ERGs or affinity groups or committees that focus on these efforts. And staff can see their connection to the workplace, to each other, and to the work being done. So I want to also take a second to talk about maybe some potential misconceptions across the landscape here in Indiana, or generally as it relates to diversity work. First and foremost, that there is no diversity here. That's a common phrase, right? And I think that comes from the thought potentially that diversity is always something that is seen, that is visually able to be identified. I want to draw your attention to the diagram on the right and look at the many, many layers that make up one's diverse identity and characteristics. So it starts at the center there to the left of identity. So that could be your personality, right? That is kind of who you are. We add on to that primary diversity layer, which are kind of those things you're born into or grow into, your age, your abilities, your gender identity, ethnicity, race, right? We add then another layer, maybe that bring in experiences or connections to your environment. So it could be religion, education level or opportunities, geography, communication styles, family or marital status, language. Then we add and look at the workplace, right? Organizational diversity, right? Within your own organization, there are different roles, right? Which have different levels or tenures or experiences. You might have a different network based on your life experience as well as your professional experience. And we add into that cultural diversity. Cultural diversity, right, might influence the way that you view power or authority, the way you kind of move about spaces. It might influence your traditions or the ways you observe certain holidays or traditions or practices. It might even influence your personal space and your preferences there. And when you bring all of these together, every individual that you come across has an intersecting amount of layers of diversity that they're bringing with them. So there is always diversity, and it is not always seen. The other point that I want to talk about is knowing as a misconception. One of my very favorite disability justice advocates always says, if you know one person with a disability, you know one person with a disability, right? And she gets specific on each disability. But the point being, right, knowing one person is knowing that one person or that one person with a specific identity. Everyone is bringing layers of intersection into their identity. And no individual is a monolith representation of an entire community. All right, so let's think about where do we start, right? So if you haven't done anything, you haven't started, right, let's get to work. So the approach, where are we starting? So first and foremost, we want to start with assessment and alignment. So assessment is looking at or gathering awareness about the situation, identifying gaps or concerns, as well as those growth opportunities. So that could come a variety of ways: organizational data, community data, landscape data, right? It's important to look at all of the factors at play, not just with your individual staff and your organizational staff and those you're serving, but the community that you're serving, the individuals that are coming in and out of your doors, the landscape of the field that you're in. All of that data can influence the work. And crucially important is that voices of all staff and stakeholders are at the table for these discussions. You can't do the work if you don't talk to your youth workers about this work. We encourage you to do that safely and don't make individuals, always have to stand up and say things. Sometimes it might need to be anonymous, and your partners can help you with processes that gather that information. But you have to, if we're looking at increasing belonging and feeling of belonging for a youth worker, you're going to have to figure out where we're starting, right? And that's that assessment piece. Alignment. So vision and mission. How does understanding or increasing DEI and youth worker well-being and belonging support your mission, vision, and the services you're providing? Words to actions. So do you potentially support youth workers to learn and grow for better work performance, but not necessarily provide the same for their workplace? And external versus internal. Does the perception of your diversity of your organization or your efforts actually match the reality of the internal culture and practices for the youth workers functioning within it? All right, I love a good theme. So this one is, how does it feel within? So let's dig in. First and foremost, right, it's all in. So it's not top down necessarily, right? Because you do need leadership, and leadership drives culture, right? We know that staff leave primarily because of leadership or management. But so not necessarily top down, everyone has a role. So everyone is at the table, everyone has a role in the work. So you might ask yourself then, how is everyone involved and connected to the work, both individually and collectively, for the organizational outcomes? Diversity work by nature is an individual and a group effort. Every individual has to look within themselves to make adjustments and changes, address bias in some of those things. And then organizationally, you will move much quicker when every individual is doing the work on their own and every individual is tapped into the organizational goals and outcomes as well. Leaning in. That means that the default of the culture is curiosity through connection. So you have a learning culture. You get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Everything is done with transparency and vulnerability. I do want to note though, right, this is not step one. Leaning in and being uncomfortable and being vulnerable is not step one. You need to build psychological safety, maybe set some agreements and ground rules in order for that to happen, but it is definitely best practice. Buy-in. There needs to be literal and figurative buy-in, which means there's a plan for sustainable and substantive change. A lot of that is looking at your capacity. So are you truly allocating adequate time and space and funding? We can help with that one. And resources as it relates to the capacity needed to do this work. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging does not happen overnight. So again, we encourage, and you'll see it show up later, to have a full strategy and plan that you implement. It will take time. This is not a quick fix, but it's an important one. And then it has to be intersectional. So that's the collective identity and the impact that it has on your workplace. So that's looking at the intersection of identities, but also the related systems of oppression, domination, or discrimination that impact that individual as well. So usually I try to frame everything positive and don't use negative language, but it's important to talk about what to avoid in this work as well. So first and foremost, this is not a performance. You hear, let's not do performative work. So center, why does this work matter? Why is it important that my youth worker can show up every day with their full selves to engage in this work fully to serve the young people that they're serving? Why does it matter? How will we maintain and continue progress? Are the plans sustainable, substantive, and non-performative? You might hear that a few times today on this session. Again, long duration work, important work. Get ready to dig in. And are we focused on youth workers and the internal experience and culture more than the external, right? We're not slapping a diversity statement on the website day one. We're focusing on youth workers and seeing the gains internally. If you do a great job with that and your youth workers tell you so, talk about it later. But let's focus on doing the work first and talking about it second. Then words and actions. Again, alignment, right? Is our language consistent and inclusive? Right? Words matter from top to bottom. The words you use with your young people, the words you use about your youth workers, the language you use about the work, words matter. And do those plans, words, and actions, are they all speaking the same language towards the outcomes that you're trying to meet? And the goal of everything you see listed above there is to do no harm, right? What we know is that this work is crucially important. And individuals of diverse identities might become really excited about this work happening within their organization. What we don't want to do is get that excitement and that hope building and then it have no long impact, right? Or it to be kind of a performative, we checked the box, we did it, let's keep moving, right? So we want to make sure that we're digging into the work the right way and we're causing no harm along the way. Okay, so I want to transition into looking at the grant opportunity. If some of you were on the kickoff session, some of this will look a little bit familiar, or if you reviewed the RFA, but I want to talk then alignment with what we're trying to do and what it's going to look like when you go to apply. So when you go to apply for the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging grant, you will be selecting, one of the first things you're going to do is select the category as to which you're looking to make improvements in. You might choose to address one category, two, or all categories, depending on the needs of your organization. So I just want to talk through those. The first one is assessment. We've already talked about that a little bit today, but that is conducting organizational assessment. This could also be individual assessment that rolls up to organizational data, right? Again, it's getting us that picture of where we are. So that can be quantitative, qualitative. It might be something like an IDI assessment that looks at intercultural diversity and understanding there for the individual, but that gives a picture within your organization of that understanding. And that's a tool you will see listed on the resources. And again, with the goal of being growth in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging workplace practices. The next category is agency strategy and policy. So that's where you might look at revision, creation, or development of plans that look to impact and create a clear direction with the connection between resources, activities, and goals to meet DEIB outcomes. So we talked about sustainable, substantive change. This is where that happens. This is creating a formal plan that looks to get you, again, from where you are to where you want to be. It also would include policy creation or revision, right? It might look like more restorative policies around HR or other such things. It might be looking at all of your HR handbooks and all things that impact at a baseline your organization. And again, you'll see that in the resources as well. Workplace programs. This would be revision, creation, or development of few more programmatic efforts. So I mentioned earlier something like an affinity group that allows like identity individuals to come together. That would be an example of a workplace program. Again, with the goal to create safe and equitable workplace environments. Then there's organizational knowledge. This would be anything that moves the needle on understanding and information. So training, consulting, coaching on topics that support growth organizationally within DEIB workplace practices. I do want to note that is not targeting giving skills to youth workers to do their jobs. This is, again, skills and knowledge. It might be to youth workers, but it's likely also leadership and everyone involved to create organizational level impact and change. I do want to mention, so you will see when we get into the kind of grant resource area, keep in mind these categories as kind of reference. So we've mentioned guiding towards outcomes. So let's share what those are for the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging grants. The outcomes we are driving towards and you would be evaluated on as part of your grant are the following. Agency leaders will indicate they feel more equipped to improve workplace culture for historically marginalized or minoritized groups. Youth serving professionals agree that agency efforts are improving their experience. So that might look like fewer microaggressions, better opportunities for advancement, etc. Youth serving professionals are recognized and valued for all of their unique identities, abilities, backgrounds, cultures, and ideas. And youth serving professionals increase their feelings of belonging at work. So some additional information about how that shows up in the application process would be in the narrative section. So we talked about what we want to know and what we want to kind of see in this application is where you are and where you've been and where you're trying to go, right, in this work. So we're going to ask you to describe past or current work related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and when that work started. We're going to ask you to describe your organization's current challenges as it relates to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. You're going to select those categories we just talked about that you're going to be addressing. And then you're going to provide a description of activities and their alignment with the grant outcomes we just walked through, and include a clear timeline and proposed activities. You're going to additionally tell us about the staff or board members that will be leading this work. Describe the impact of the proposed activities will have on the youth workers. A description of your proposal budget. And then you'll be sharing with us a list of specific project resources, partners, or tools that you're going to use in order to do this work. That leads us right into our Youth Worker Wellbeing Grant resources. So I mentioned early on that one of the organizational barriers was potentially knowing who to partner with, who to get help from, who to help guide this important work. So in an effort to support or alleviate that barrier for organizations, IYI has worked to curate a list of what we're calling grant resources that includes trainers, consultants, and resources or tools that support you in fulfilling your organizational goals related to DEIB workplace. Upon applying, you may choose to use one of these outlined resources. You may also select one of your own. But either way, we will be asking you to share information about that resource or partner consultant with us. So I will say, if you go to our website right now, under the grant opportunities and then grant resources, so what you're seeing is kind of the what do they call breadcrumbs on the website as you would navigate to there. It is under construction. Our awesome communications director is painstakingly and lovingly helping us build this webpage out as we speak. But what you're going to see when you go there is you're going to go to grant resources. Under that, then for this particular piece, you would then look under diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. You will then see profiles of consultants and trainers. Each will list the primary categories and secondary categories that they're able to support work in. So again, going back to those 4 categories, the assessment, agency strategy and policy, workplace programs, and organizational knowledge, you will see listed under each profile which categories that potential consultant can support you with. In addition to that, you're going to see a list of awesome cultivated trainers or trainings that we feel also provide great supplemental content to these efforts, right? So if you are doing diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, you very well might need to start with an implicit bias training, right? So you will see trainers and providers for that there as well as part of those needs. And then in addition, you will see resources or specific tools that we have vetted and curated for you as well. You will also see a list of the same layout under the trauma-informed workplace efforts as well. But specifically for this, you're going to be looking at that top list of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging grant resources. Want you to know, I mentioned it was under construction. It also is growing. So as we continue to have conversations with consulting partners or trainers, we will keep adding amazing individuals and entities to those lists in every category as we continue to build this out, not only in preparation for this round of grants, but for the next round of grants and ongoing. We also want to provide to you some thoughts around what it looks like to maybe vet your own partner or resource. And this is much of what we guided to do our list. So we looked at experience, right? Experience with the particular topic. So in this circumstance, right, it'd be diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. Their experience with the community, experience with youth serving organizations or nonprofits, right? And all of that intersection of those experiences that they bring to the table. It also would include lived experience potentially. Data and evaluation. So what methods are these individuals or entities using to guide or assess the work? What data evaluation are they using to help you guide your work? We also talked through personal approach and expectations, right? We made sure that collaboration was first and foremost at the forefront of service. Their style and their fit with the organization as well. We wanted to make sure we curated a full list for you because you'll have different needs and you also have different ways that you want to do the work. And so you will be able to vet that as well. On the right side there, there are some additional more research-based scientific methods you can use when it comes to evaluating sources. I'm not going to walk through all of those for you, but there is, and it's what we use to vet our resources that you will see. We use the middle option there. There is additional information on that link. So as you get into that, and you're looking for a resource. If we don't have one, you can use that to vet one as well. Okay, so I want to also look at some of the funding, general funding, logistics, application logistics, in case you haven't yet dug into those pieces. And this is just a high-level overview. I want to remind you that on the website is the RFA, which outlines all of the specifics around eligibility and all of those pieces as well, timelines, etc. All online. It's also in the recording of the grant kickoff, which is on the webpage as well. But for today's purpose, let's stay high level and let's talk through a few of the pieces. So funding, reminder that agencies may apply one time per year for either or both of the following opportunities: up to $20,000 for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging work, and up to $10,000 for trauma-informed workplace within organizations. Again, that is once per year for either or both of those opportunities. And we will ask on the application if you are applying for both. Logistics-wise, you can access the application on youthworkerwellbeing.org under grant opportunities. You can save and return to the application. As always, best practice, we would encourage that to be in a Word document first, just in case technology decides to do what technology can do, but you are technically able to save and return. Additional reminders, this focus is on the youth workers, the environment, the workplace culture. Resources are available, again, to support your application, to support the outcomes you're trying to reach, under that grant opportunities page under grant resources. Technical assistance will be available. We'll go through that in a minute. And again, additional details all on youthworkerwellbeing.org under grant opportunities. Deadlines of importance for you. The grant application is open already. So it opened last Friday. Applications are due April 15th. With award notifications going out by May 15th. Funding would then be distributed by June 30th, with implementation of activities to start as early as July 1, and you have 1 year to expend these funds. I mentioned technical assistance. We did do a kickoff webinar on 2/29. That recording is now available online on the grants opportunity page. Next week, we are doing a similar session like this one, but for trauma-informed workplaces for youth worker well-being. That'll be led by Kathy Wade, our Vice President. That is March 12th from 11 to noon. That registration opportunity is scannable in front of you there or on our webpage as well. We also have what we call open office hours, where Evan and I, the directors of quality, hold space for you to come in the first and third Friday of the month to ask any questions. Right now, that might be about these grant opportunities. It could be about anything youth worker well-being related, but that is an open opportunity for you to come in and connect with us and ask questions. I will say, as it relates to grant opportunities, this would be more TA around logistics, not guidance on your narrative or activities. We will be scoring applications, so we cannot give you feedback on that, but we can support you in TA-related needs. Additionally, you can always reach youth worker well-being staff members with our general email there, and our amazing coordinator, Michelle, will figure out who that needs to go to and connect you with the right person to meet your needs. Okay, that felt really quick. We want to take a minute for questions and answers. So we'll do that section. I also want to make sure that you please take a minute to share your feedback on this session today. Let us know if it was supportive and getting you thinking about the application process. Again, we know that this did not answer all your diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging questions, but we hope that it was helpful in moving the needle as you start to think about what you might work towards, and help you understand a little bit more about the application process. So as you are doing that, if you don't have questions, we're going to head on over to the questions. Let's see. All right. So that one looks answered. That one looks answered. First question is, we are a child care resource and referral agency. Would our work with families allow us to be eligible to apply for this grant? So there are very, very specific eligibility requirements listed online, some of which include being a charitable organization as listed under IRS code would be one, serving youth and families as 75% of your services being another. So I would refer to those specifically around your designation and the services that you provide. I am not, let's see. Question is, would therapy services be an expense that can be paid from this grant? So again, cannot answer specific activity application questions. I would say that this is what I would say. The point of the grant funding is to increase youth worker well-being and belonging, and to reduce stress and vicarious trauma. So if an activity aligns with those, if an activity meets the grant outcomes that we're driving towards at an agency leader level or a youth worker level, but we would need to see and understand a lot more about the picture in order to answer that directly. Let's see. There's a question, how did we arrive at the $20,000 and $10,000 cap? Was there research done about the general cost of these services? We want to make sure employees are paid for their time and training. We wonder. I would say yes, as someone who has experience delivering this work, $10,000 and $20,000, and after conversations with partners, etc., definitely enough room in a budget to address both incentivizing or paying staff to take advantage of whatever opportunities you're providing, as well as to find a quality provider. So yes. Let's see. So there's a question, is there a way to download the entire application to work on answers, or is it only accessible per page? So it does function like a typical online application, right? You're going to answer and kind of click through. What I would suggest, though, is looking at the RFA document that is linked on our website. That does list out the same pieces that I showed you today with the narrative. That is all outlined, and that is going to be the majority of the responses you're going to need to be putting in. So I would start with a Word document. If I was doing it, I would grab a Word document, I would drop that list in there, and I would start answering questions there based on that list in the RFA under the narrative questions portion. Anything else that's not listed there is going to be more organizational data and information that you likely can answer without, kind of needing to do much other effort. I'm thinking we've answered most. I would like to, again, draw attention back while we're giving a second for any additional questions to come in, and request that you please take a minute to complete the feedback survey. I want to again remind you everything we talked about today, all of the resources, tools, partners, consultants, application, recordings, everything is online at youthworkerwellbeing.org under grant opportunities. Don't hesitate to reach out for questions. I am going to stop the recording for now in case there are potentially other questions that need to be asked outside of this. So we're going to pause, or we're going to stop the recording here in a second. But I do want to say again, thank you for being here. Thank you for your desire to improve workplace conditions for youth workers. We feel it's important. We're glad that you do too. And so thank you for being here today.